Hello there everybody, Sam Strains here, welcome back to the Railway and welcome back to another review, this time of a Bachmann Pacific. So, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I reckon this is only the second class of Pacifics I've ever reviewed from Bachmann, the first being the A4 of course, which is obviously quite an old model. Well, the ones I've got are pretty old, they're split chassis, and the detail's pretty basic. So today I'm going to be looking at one that is much more modern, and as you can tell from the title, it is this, the A1, and as you can tell by the box, it isn't really all that modern. I reckon this one's about 10 years old, but despite the box being relatively old-fashioned, the model inside is actually pretty modern. The detail is superb, it hasn't got a split chassis, it has got the full pickups, and it's even got a DCC socket inside, so it is relatively modern in that sense. And I bought this one on eBay for £75, which is quite a bargain actually, because Bachmann currently sell, I think, this same model for £189, which is absolutely insane for a model that is, getting on for 10 years old or thereabouts. Now, the ones that Bachmann are selling, I'll put a link down in the description so that you can see them, those are improved admittedly. They have a painted cab, for example, and the cab in this one is blank, but other than that, as far as I can tell, it is the same tooling, it's the same model essentially, so yeah, £189, ridiculous. But anyway, that's not this one. This one cost me £75 plus a little bit of postage, and I was really pleased with that. So let's take a look at this one then, the Bachmann A1. Really looking forward to this because it's such a good quality model. Okay, let's get this one out. Now, as you can tell by the box, the image on the front here is clearly an A1 in BR green, and it's got the name Great Central, but of course that is not the logo inside the box, and it's not the wrong box or anything like that. This is just what Bachmann used to do. Essentially, they had one image for the entire class, and they would use that on every single model they made, regardless of the livery. Obviously, it's not an issue anymore because in the block of ice packaging, you can see the model itself through the little window there, which is a lot better. But yeah, in those days, it used to be like that, and of course, I'm glad it's not like that anymore, because you couldn't tell exactly what you'd be getting. You'd have to look at the end of the box. But let us do that now. Let's take a look at the end of the box, find out exactly what this one is. So this one is 32-554. It's a Class A1, and it is a Peppercorn A1, by the way. Number 60114, W.P.Allen, that's the name of the loco. It's in Doncaster Green and British Railways, because of course the Peppercorn A1s were introduced just about at the same time as nationalisation, so they never really were part of the LNER. Anyway, not much to see on the box except the fact that this is part of the blue ribboned range, which basically means that it's top of the range for the time, and I can agree with that. There's a lot of good quality features of this model, and of course it is DCC ready, which probably makes it one of the earliest DCC ready models. Anyway, nothing on the back, it's just a few warnings or something like that. So let's get on straight away then and open up the model, and I think I'll do it from this end, although it doesn't really matter. Here we go. And as you can see, this is the little card that comes on the front, Class A1, and there's the image I mentioned already. And I believe if we take a look at the back, you've got more of a diagram of the class itself, or the locomotive anyway, and there's a brief history there. So feel free to pause and read that if you'd like to, although I will give you my own sort of abridged history of the A1 later on. And then also inside this little sleeve, you've got, I think this is the only part of interest really, the exploded diagram, of course, which shows the mechanism there. And yeah, you can see the DCC decoder socket there, which is again quite a relatively early one. And yep, you can see all the mechanism there. You can also see that this is not a split chassis model, and yeah, it's got a lot of modern features, including removable coal, as you can see there. So yeah, that's interesting, but that's all it is. So anyway, let's move on and take a look at the model, or rather the detail packs. So anyway, you can see the model there. If I just pull these little bits of foamy stuff out the way, you can see that yes, she is in Doncaster Green, and very, very beautiful she is too. I mean, just look at that. Oh, these get me every time. And yep, the British Railways tender, as it said on the end of the box, so they weren't lying, that's definitely true. Okay, let's take a look at the detail packs then, and from what I remember, these are really impressive. So here's the first one, and as you can see, inside there you've got lamps, you've got cap doors, vacuum pipes, little chain link couplings, absolutely everything. That is not all. In the other bag, the second bag, you have what appear to be cylinder drain cocks in there, unpainted, but they're there nonetheless, and also some brake rigging, which I believe might be for the tender. I reckon the loco had them fitted already, or maybe it doesn't. But regardless, again, a lot of detail in these detail packs, which means obviously you've got to do the work and stick them on yourself. But I suppose when they had packaging like this, I mean, it didn't protect them as well as the blocks of ice do these days. So I guess it's smart. Anyway, I'm going to try and pull this out. I might have to use the holes in the back. I don't like doing that, but I'll do that today. So let's grab the loco. As you can tell, it isn't connected to the tender, which means that obviously there aren't any tender pickups on this model, which is a bit of a shame. You really are just getting the driving wheels picking up, but as it stands, it doesn't run too badly as a result. So yes, there's the loco, absolutely fantastic, and she weighs an awful lot as well, and that's because the entire running board is made of die-cast metal, and so therefore it's one of the biggest running boards made of metal I've got in my collection. It really is nice, and I suppose that's why these days they're so expensive, but I'd rather they weren't. So there she is, W.P.Allen, absolutely gorgeous, and isn't that Doncaster Green just fantastic? It really is. Okay, so that's the loco. Let me grab the tender for you then, and I've always quite liked the tenders on these because they're quite modern looking. Not that I normally like modern stuff all that much, but as you can see there's loads of riveting going on the tender, and the tender is also heavy too. I mean, what a nice development that is. You normally don't get heavy tenders. I don't think there's any die cast on the tender, it's only the wheels that are metal as far as I can tell, and presumably the weight inside, but apart from that, a really, really good tender. So that's that. Let me try and hold the loco with the tender if I can, a couple of them even if I can. So there you have it, the beautiful A1, and doesn't it look superb? I mean, these are expensive, but man, aren't they nice? There we go, W.P.Allen. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history of the A1, and after I've done that I will show you this beauty in a little bit more detail. Okay, let's get to it. So the Peppercorn Class A1 was similar looking to the Gresley A1 and A3 design, but it was in fact a completely separate class. They were introduced the same year as nationalisation occurred in 1948 to the design, of course, of Arthur Peppercorn. At this time, the demand for stronger and faster locomotives was as great as ever, and the ageing Gresley A3 locomotives were starting to struggle with the task. As a result, the new class of A1 was ordered, and Edward Thompson had actually initiated the new design during the LNER days, but it was really Peppercorn who was considered the chief designer, and the order wasn't completed until nationalisation had occurred. The final design produced a very powerful three-cylinder locomotive capable of hauling heavy 15-coach trains at speeds of up to 70 miles an hour, and 49 Peppercorn A1 locomotives were produced in total, but just 17 years later the entire class had been withdrawn and scrapped to make way for the new diesels, which of course is so wasteful. They were nowhere near the end of their working lives really, and although none of the originals survived, a brand new Peppercorn A1 was completed in 2008, and she's called Tornado of course, and this was based on the Peppercorn design, but it also featured some improvements. This example, W.P.Allen, was introduced in 1948 and withdrawn in 1964, having only spent 16 years in service. So there she is then, up against the white background, the beautiful Bachmann Peppercorn A1, looking really, really fantastic. And as I say, for a model that was tooled up quite a few years ago now, the detail really isn't too bad at all. As I've already mentioned, the running board is made of completely die-cast metal. As you can see, it stretches the whole length of the thing, which actually gives the loco an awful lot of weight, which is a big thumbs up from me. And looking at the running board, you can see that it's also beautifully riveted as well. Really quite a nice bit of detail in that. Now, the paintwork from this kind of distance looks absolutely superb, and generally I'd agree that it is, but as you can see, if we look closely at the boiler banding, some of it is a little bit on the messy side, and it's certainly not up to the kind of standards that we're used to with Bachmann these days, especially around in front of the cab here. You can see that the paintwork looks a little bit blobby there, but obviously they've changed their livery application since this was made, because they're a lot better these days. But nonetheless, from, if we stand back like we are doing now, it does look the part, and you really can't complain. The running board has also got this beautiful red lining along it, as you can see, and around the rear truck you can see that there's a lot of red lining going on there. And similarly, the wheels are lined as well. Again, not quite up to the standards that some of Hornby's recent LNER locos have been. The P2, for example, had superb lining on the wheels, but it does look pretty good. As you can see, the axles there are painted up, which is nice to see. On the side of the cab you can see the running number, not in the LNER font, but in the more sort of British Railways-esque font. But then also below there you've got what is presumably a builder's plate and the route availability, which again is really nicely painted. And looking just a little bit further up there, you can see that yes, the windows on the cabs are glazed, which is great to see. The name of the loco, W.P.Allen, is nicely applied onto the smoke deflector there, and again, yes, this loco does have smoke deflectors, which is quite a characteristic feature of the Peppercorn A1. The nameplate isn't etched or anything like that, and I don't believe we got an etched one in the detail packs, but nonetheless it is applied quite nicely. And taking a look around the front, you can see we also have the running number and shed code on the smoke box, and the smoke box itself is quite nicely detailed with handrails, and it looks like a separately fitted handle as well, which is quite good to see. The buffer beams are also really nicely detailed. You can see there they look just the part, and yes, the buffers are sprung, which again for a model that is getting on in years is quite a nice feature. And looking just above the buffer beam, you can see that there are holes where the lamp irons would normally be on a locomotive. Now, when I first saw that, I assumed, right, well, the lamp irons are probably in the detail pack then. But actually, no, it appears that in real life, that is how the locomotives looked, and so this model looks right. You don't have to fit anything from the detail pack for that to look right. That is how they were, apparently. Separately fitted wise, there's quite a lot of detail going on. Of course, you've got the pipework and hand railing going along the side of the model, which is done to a high standard. Up on top of the cab, or just in front, you've got the two safety valves, which do appear to be made of metal, which is pretty nice. Although the little whistle just popping out the front of the cab there does look like it's made of plastic, which is a bit of a shame, but it's not a big deal. The top of the cab is super detailed. You can see there's loads of riveting going on there, although none of the air intakes for the crew open or anything. They are just static, unfortunately, but that's fair enough, I suppose. Looking inside the cab, unfortunately there isn't any painted detail going on inside there. Obviously for £75 that I paid for this, that is absolutely acceptable. For £190 or near enough that Bachmann sell this model for now, that isn't acceptable, and indeed they have actually now updated the model to include a painted cab, which is a lot better. You know, that's exactly what you'd expect. So that's pretty much it for the detail. As you can see, there's quite a lot of detailing going along the running board there, as you can see. I think that's all separately fitted, but I could be wrong. I haven't had a really close look at that, but maybe in this shot here you'll be able to tell. And obviously you've got a lot of fine-looking valve gear and linkage going on there, which looks great, and it'll look all the better once it gets running, so I'll definitely be doing that pretty soon. For now then, let's take a look at the tender. As you can see, a beautiful tender. It's got a lot of the same features that the Loco has, for example, the paintwork. The application is quite a bit better on the tender though. I suppose that's because it's easier, it's not curving like the boiler of the Loco is, and as such the lining looks a lot more crisp on the tender. And also again, the underframe is very nicely picked out with red lining there, as you can see around the axle boxes there, which looks fantastic. The coal up on top isn't all that realistic looking. I would say Bachmann have done better coal on other models, but it is removable, so that means you're not stuck with it, so that's a big thumbs up. And around the back you can see again loads and loads of detail. You've got separately fitted lamp irons, there's some pipe work going up there, or it might even be an electrical cable for the lamp that's a little bit higher up. Again, more sprung buffers, and yes, this model also has NEM couplings, as you can see there, so again, quite a nice modern feature. Okay, let's see how she performs on the track then. Quite a bit to talk about on the performance, so let's get to that straight away. Alright, here we go. Okay, so there she is then, the beautiful Bachmann A1, and she is beautiful down onto the track. And I'm going to talk about performance and get her tested for you in a second, but first of all, here's what she's going to be pulling. She's going to be coupling up to this massive rake of, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ex-LNER coaches. So if she can haul all those, we'll know what a good runner she is, but I've no doubt she will, because obviously she is very, very heavy with all that die-cast on the Loco. So anyway, that's great, but let's talk a little bit about performance. So as I've already touched on, there are no tender pickups or anything like that, and in fact the DCC socket is in the Loco too, so obviously there is no need to have any wires going to the tender. On the convenience front, that is pretty good, but it does mean that she's only relying on a few pickups, and I don't believe the bogie or truck wheels have any pickups on them either, so we're only talking 3 pickups going to each line. Now in practice that doesn't matter too much. She does actually run fine, and she even gets over the express point without any trouble, but once again, as I said I think last time, it will mean that you might have to clean the wheels more often than you'd like to be, just so that those few pickups do keep working. If you've got more pickups than just 3 on each rail, then it's less important to keep the wheels absolutely, 100% clean, but with these it is. The other slight criticism I've got is the same with most Bachmann Locos actually, and that's the fact that you haven't got any turned metal bearings in the chassis. The wheels, well the axles of the wheels at least, go straight onto the mazak of the chassis, and there's no proper bearings on there, which again means that when she runs it's quite noisy. There's quite a lot of metal grating sound going on, which you will hear compared with the Hornby ones, which do have the proper bearings, and it also obviously increases wear slightly as well. So yeah, I don't like that. For expensive models they should have bearings, but I've sounding like a broken record because I've said that several times, but it stands true, and I guess I'll keep saying it because it'd be nice to get the message across that we want bearings. So let's give this a try on slow speed then, and as you can see the slow speed is really pretty good. There you go, look at that. And at this speed she's also very, very quiet. So I'm going to keep her going forwards like that until she reaches the express points. And like I say, she doesn't seem to cut out on the express points as you'd expect her to, with only 3 pickups going to each rail. So it's not a huge complaint.
And there you go, as you can see, yep, she's done that. So that's very good, and she's just as good in reverse, as you can see. But now if I speed her up, you might hear what I mean about the noise. See what I mean? It's very, very hard to describe. It's just, you get that sort of metal on metal noise. Maybe it doesn't even come across in camera on the audio, but you know, I know what I mean. But it's not a huge deal, because as you can see, regardless of the specs, she does run very, very nicely, and that I can't deny. So, very good performance, I can't deny that. Okay, let's go and couple to the coaches then, and see how she hauls. Okay. Stop her just there. Right, I'll just double check that she's in shot. Ooh, sort of. Yeah, it's a bit dodgy framing really there, isn't it? Okay, so let's try her going forwards then. As I said, 8 coaches is quite heavy. There's quite a big load for her, but as I say, I'm sure she'll do it. And I can't see any wheel slip there either, so I mean, power is really something that this loco does well. And it will do, because it's so heavy. So there we go, let's haul those coaches out of the way. All 8 of them. Get her up to a good express speed, and I'll show you what's on the other lines. So on the middle and inside line actually, I'm going to be running the Hornby A1s, so let me just bring these in. Now these Hornby versions are based on Tornado, the 2008 locomotive, as opposed to the original run of A1s. And as you can see, they've got the similar sort of issue. These don't have tender pickups, so they do stop on points and things, which is a shame. But generally, they are very, very, very similar to the Bachmann versions. Let me bring these closer. The detail is extremely similar, and in some places the detail is better. For example, the lining is much higher quality on these Hornby ones. They don't have glazed windows. That is a big downgrade against the Bachmann versions, but they do have the proper bearings in the chassis, which does make them a lot better. And they're also extremely heavy, even though they don't have the metal running board. They do have a very, very heavy metal chassis. So actually, for half the price, I don't know whether I might recommend just the Hornby Railroad versions. The detail is similar. I think the Bachmann one does have the edge on the detail, of course, but not by an awful long way. So anyway, let's get these started then. My BR Blue version, these are both Tornado. My BR Blue version is on DC, and my green version is on DCC, but I'm being a little bit naughty and I'm running her on DC today. So enjoy the running session, see which other locos you can spot on the layout, and today there is an odd one out, but it's quite a tricky one, so I'm going to give you a little clue. Keep an eye on the tenders. If you look at them closely, that might give the answer to you. Let's see how old W.P.Allen handles a slight gradient then. Here she comes, looking absolutely fantastic. Look at that. I mean, it looks the part, doesn't it? And it feels the part in your hands as well, all that weight, all that metal. And no wheel slip either up this incline, so you've got to give that the thumbs up, haven't you? And obviously on DCC, this BR Green Tornado really does fly along. Not so much with the blue version, because she's on DC, and I did mess around with the motor on that, because the original one gave up the ghost. It was my fault though, because I over-oiled it, and that's something I had to learn the hard way, unfortunately. There she goes. Quite a good speed actually. She does tend to race quite nicely, which is what you want really from an express passenger loco. Not too fast at medium speed, but not too slow either. So anyway, here are my scores then for the Bachmann A1. This was quite a difficult one to rate, but I've done my best, and here are my thoughts. So, detail, I felt that 3 out of 5 was a bit too harsh, but 4 out of 5 was a bit too generous, so it was tricky, but I've gone with 3 out of 5, just because some of the paintwork is a little bit sloppy, and also for the fact that there is no painted cab, and other little things like that, but the detail is pretty good, so middle of the road, 3 out of 5. Power though, she weighs so much, she couldn't not get a 5 out of 5. She can pull, I think, what, 7 or 8 coaches without a problem at all, so it's got to be 5 out of 5. And equally, slow speed, 5 out of 5. Despite not having any tender pickup, she does it fine, even across express points. It does mean that you've got to keep the wheels nice and clean all the time, otherwise you will see the performance decline quite quickly. But as long as you're willing to do that, the slow speed is fantastic. Quality then, again, this was a difficult one, but because I've given the slow speed 5, I thought I would knock off 1 point from the quality for not having tender pickups, and another point from the quality for not having proper bearings in the chassis. I think that's got to be a must really, especially with an expensive model. Now, again, the value was a real dilemma to me, because the RRP at the moment of this model, or what I think is this model, is £189.95, which is pretty crazy to me, but it looks like there have been some updates on the model since mine was produced, so it wouldn't be fair if I really knocked this particular model down for that price, when actually the more modern ones are a lot better. So let me know if you've got one of the modern Bachmann versions, which does come in the block of ice packaging and does have the painted cab. Is it the same model that's just been improved, or is it a lot better? Please let me know, I'd love to know. So I've given it 4 out of 5. I paid $75 for this and I think that is pretty good, but let me know. I've definitely given it the benefit of the doubt there. Overall then, that is 7.63 out of 10, and let's put that into the ranking then at 15th, just above the Bachmann Thomas there and below the Humvee Sentinel. Definitely not too bad. Whoa, she's really giving it some, isn't she? Crikey. And don't you just love the BR blue on this one? It really is something else, isn't it? Fantastic. Look at that. Yep, regardless of the small criticisms I've got for this, you've got to admit it just looks the part, doesn't it? Okay then folks, well that will just about do it for today's review. I really hope you enjoyed that. As I say, I've not done very many Bachmann Pacific reviews before, so it's really been quite enjoyable for me. And of course she really is a splendid piece of kit whenever we see her, whenever she comes around again. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, if you did, please feel free to leave it a like or even a comment, because I do love it when you guys get in touch. But for now, once again, thank you very much for your company, and I will see you all very soon. Cheers everybody.